Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody. Recognize a lot of names and put faces to a lot of them. Those who are kind of new to Creative Vision and myself, welcome. One thing, kind of the way we're gonna do this. Gonna mute all your microphones. We just found it's easier. If you look for a little like talk bubble on your GoToMeeting screen, you should see that brings up the chat. So if you have question, toss it out there. I'll leave that open. I kind of monitor that and try and bring up the questions then. I will have time at the end. I will open it up to general questions for anybody who is interested or has other questions they want to ask. So let me real quick here. Before I get started here, does anybody have a question before I get started? All right. I am going to record this, and if you wanted to get the recording of this, what we do, we'll make it available to you. You can email me, and I'll give you the information on where you can access it from. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about here is kind of what I call catalog maintenance in Lightroom. It's dealing with a number of different things on how we manage our Lightroom catalog. If you do any significant amount of shooting, this catalog can very quickly become large and somewhat unmanageable. So how you maintain it, it's a little bit about maintenance. It'll be a little bit about some things on how you set it up and use it, all kind of following under this maintenance. One of the first things to consider is how many catalogs should you have? You can have as many catalogs in Lightroom as you want. When I first started using Lightroom, I ran with 5 basic catalogs: work, family, travel, miscellaneous, and then very specifically for a place where I managed images for their website. So I had these 5 kind of basic catalogs. But later on, as I kind of got into this, and they brought some other features online. One of them is syncing and accessing images via the Lightroom CC, which is the cloud version, mobile version, because you could only sync one catalog. So I made the decision and I merged all my catalogs into a single catalog. I call it the master catalog. I still have other catalogs that I use for some specific things, and then actually I didn't really get rid of my 5 basic catalogs either. So it's one thing to think about is, do I want a single catalog? Do I want multiple catalogs? Another philosophy that I've run across photographers talking about, especially those who might do a lot of work shooting for very specific projects. So what they would do is they would create a catalog, a working catalog for that project or job of just those images. And then when that job was complete, or the project was complete, or they've moved on where they're not accessing it nearly as much, they would then merge that into their master catalog. So they always have it available through Lightroom. And it's one way for them to manage it. I didn't think I was going to adjust to going from multiple to one catalog, but I think I've adjusted pretty well. I don't see myself ever going back. Now, I do a kind of a hybrid on the master working philosophy for when I travel, which I'll talk about here in just a couple minutes. So these are the things. Now, when we use a single catalog, then we can use keywords and metadata across all of our images in that single catalog. Because the one thing you have to remember is Lightroom catalogs do not communicate with each other. If you put an image in one catalog and you decide, well, I'm going to put this in the other catalog also because it's family on vacation or family while I'm traveling, and I put it in both catalogs, if I edit it in one, those edits do not show up in the other catalog. They are not interconnected. This is one of the advantages to a single catalog over a multiple. And this is the whole point of a digital asset management system. This is kind of a catch term that's coming for programs like Lightroom and such, in that this digital asset, I mean, if you're a working photographer, that digital file is an asset. It is worth money to you. And in order for you to make money with it, you have to be able to find them. So whether or not you go one route or the other is a choice you have to make. Small catalogs sometimes tend to be faster than big catalogs because we're not dealing with as much data. Now, the question was just put, is there a recommendation for the maximum size of a catalog? There really isn't. The thing that's going to determine that is processing power. And if you have an older computer or you have something that's a little bit slower, or it tends to be hanging up, maybe it's time to think about a new catalog. The nice thing is you don't have to get rid of the old one, you just don't access it. Another option that I've kind of run across that kind of makes a lot of sense, especially if you shoot a fair amount of catalogs, is to create a new catalog at the beginning of each year for that year. This is the 2020 catalog. If you're looking for an image that you shot in 2019, you open up the 2019 catalog. So that's another philosophy that you could have. But as far as the maximum size, I mean, I've seen catalogs that were in excess of 100,000, 150,000 images. And there was one that I was kind of working with a person on that was running about 140,000 images. And because of the computer he was using, it just crept along. It took forever to accomplish anything because the computer could not process the data fast enough. And so my recommendation was, let's start a new catalog and put the old stuff away. Because one of the things to consider, generally speaking, we don't access images that are less than or more than 30 or 60 days old. You know, you finish with something, you process it, you share it, you print it, you deliver the job, and you tend to put it away. So if you had something that it was a year old, I mean, how often do you really go back and look at images? You may go back and look for a image or a couple of images or a group of images. But, you know, when's the last time you looked at pictures from 2018? A lot of them, more than just hunting for a image. So that's one reason to consider that. So if you had a lot, by going and creating this new catalog every January 1st, you have a pretty good management of it, and you're not getting these huge, large quantity catalogs. Now, one of the things about that I thought about, and I read about, that people say, well, if I have a single catalog, it's hard to find my images. But if you make use of some of the other tools that are in Lightroom that allow you to manage your images, from how you store them in your folders when you import them, using collections, especially smart collections, and smart collections tied in with keywords, are ways to manage the large quantities and be able to keep them in a single catalog, but yet still make them accessible in a fairly easy, efficient manner. The nice thing is, and this is one of the things that we're going to talk about here today, is if you start out with a whole bunch of catalogs and you realize, nope, I got to go to a single, or you start out with a great big huge catalog and decide this isn't working for me, they have tools here that allow me to split and merge these catalogs relatively easy. Now, I'm not going to say quick, because if we're moving a lot of images across our computer, again, processing speed and processing power will dictate how long these things take. Now, another thing for people who are using Windows computers with external drives, this doesn't affect the Mac people, the Apple OS, because they don't use drive letters. They strictly use names. But Windows uses a letter system when you assign hard drives. And what happens is, when you start your computer and Windows starts up, it is applying the necessary drive letter to a physical drive in an order that Windows has defined in its operating system. It starts with the A drive, which was the old little 3.5-inch floppy. The B drive was the 5 1/4. The C drive is generally your primary drive. A D drive, an E drive might be disk drives for CDs. And then you get into memory card readers, and then you get into external drives and other drives that are installed on your computer. What can happen is, when you start your computer and maybe one time you have a card in a card reader, and so when it restarts, it applies a letter to that card, and then your external drive gets a different letter. What will happen in Lightroom is that it will show that those images are lost. Now, I can tell you the way that I learned about this little quirk is, I was actually in the middle of teaching a weekend Lightroom class, went home Saturday after teaching all day, was editing a job that I had done. I'm pretty sure it was a wedding. And I sat down at my computer, and it showed that my drive where all my images were stored was not found. I looked at it and says, nope, there it is. It's plugged in. And it acted like it was lost. Well, I begin to have heart palpitations and anxiety that my drive failed, and my job that I had just spent quite a bit of time editing crashed on me and I lost all this stuff and everything. What I realized happened is that my PC had rebooted for whatever reason. And when it came back up, because the memory card was still in the card reader, it gave that drive a different letter. And so the way Lightroom, when you put images in, that letter of the drive is part of the address. And so it showed all those images on that drive were lost. So once I realized that and I fixed it, everything came back. Now there is a way that you can prevent this from happening. And what you do is you reserve or lock in a drive letter to a physical drive. So you do this through the control panel, select administrative tools, select computer management, select disk management. Now for anybody out there who needs to do this and needs a little bit of guidance, if you shoot me an email, I have an actual PowerPoint PDF that I will send you that will show you the steps that you can have right there for you to walk you through it. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to bring up all the hard drives that are connected to your computer. We're going to select the one that we want to lock that letter in. And in this case, here I'm showing that on a drive that I had named Passport TG. And I'm going to lock it in so whenever that drive gets plugged in to my computer, it gets the letter R. And it is the only device that will ever get the letter R. So here I'm going to say change it. I'm going to select R. And then it's going to lock it in. So now, whenever the computer sees Passport TG, it is the only one that gets the letter R. The nice thing is we can literally have 26 devices because there's 26 letters in the alphabet. So any hard drives that I have connected to my computer, installed in my computer, other than the C drive, I always give them a drive letter and reserve it and lock it in. I also have found that I start at the letter M usually and go down, especially for drives that are portable that I can unplug and take somewhere else. It just doesn't conflict with the memory card readers that way. So that's one thing that I recommend, so you don't suddenly one day find and think that Lightroom lost 40,000 pictures on your hard drive. And I'm going to talk about today if images get lost. Okay. So now you've decided that I have 2 or more catalogs, and I want to import them from another catalog. I'm going to merge them into one. So here in Lightroom, and I am working in Lightroom, so here I show, I've got all my folders and my collection panels and everything. Up here under File, Import from another catalog. When I click that, it brings up a typical browser window for Mac or PC, and I would navigate to wherever that catalog is that I want to import. Now, one of the things that I do when I travel on a long trip, I mean, if I go away for a day or two, I don't necessarily do this. But back in the fall, my wife and I, we went to Europe for 2.5 weeks. And so what I do is I create a catalog on my laptop that I take with me and on an external hard drive that I'm taking with me. In this case, I call it my travel drive. And I create that catalog. And so throughout my whole trip, I can download my pictures from my memory cards into a Lightroom catalog on the laptop, storing them on my external drive and everything. Allows me to look at them, allows me to do some minor editing. The nice thing is then too, if I want to share them online, I can take the raw files, make them JPEGs, share them online during the trip or whatever very easily. So then when I come home, I connect that up, and I'm going to say import from Lightroom Catalog. So here I have my Europe 2019 Lightroom Catalog. And I'm going to say choose. It's going to prepare to import. And it's going to show me basically a import screen. If you don't see all the thumbnails, right down here, lower left-hand corner, it says show preview. If that's not checked, I don't get previews. I just get lists of folders. I can go through and say uncheck all, and I can pick. Here you can see all the various folders. So I have 13 folders that are on there. I have that there. It's showing that I have 26 photos that have not been imported. If this was a brand new catalog, it would give me a much higher number. Here under file handling, I say add to photos without moving or copy to new location and import. Well, I want to copy them to a new location because I want to get them off that external drive, and I want to get them onto my primary storage drive that's attached to my desktop computer. So right here where it says copy to, I'm going to choose, and I would have created manually this folder here that says Europe 2019 using whichever method you have for a Windows or a PC or a Mac. Create that folder, and I would select that one, say select folder, and so it's going to copy them from the external drive into my location where I'm going to store them. This is my primary image drive, and I use this one because it's also backed up through my online backup every night. So as soon as I put these in tonight, those images will start to be backed up to my online backup service. Now, change existing photos. If I did some editing outside before I've done this or after I've done this, I can tell it to update the metadata and the develop settings, or update develop settings, metadata, and the negative files. The negative files refer to the originals. Generally, I just bring in metadata and develop settings. If I've done a lot of work and bringing them in again, I will say preserve old settings as a virtual copy. Virtual copy is a digital copy of this that I can access, so I see the old and the new. Once I'm done and have that, I can then come down here. Now, because I don't have anything that's going to be new, it's not giving me the import. If I say check all, I can say import. I can also choose by folder which ones I want to bring in. I can also look at a specific folder. Now you'll see here that these do not have any preview. The reason for that is the preview that was created in the camera has been not kept because I put them into that already. Previews do not go with imports. We'll talk about previews here in a minute. So this would be then I could import these in, and I can then say where to bring them in. I've told them where to put them and what to do with it. When I select import, I'm going to get the very similar Here you can see from my previous import where my folders exist and everything from that. So now I've brought those in from my travel catalog to my master catalog. The only reason that I would actually delete it off of that external drive is if space became an issue and I wanted to get it out of my way. That's a 4 terabyte hard drive, I believe, so that catalog and those images are not taking up a ton of space. One advantage to kind of leaving it out there in my mind is, you know what, if I ever have something go really bad, I can use that and restore from if I'm really in a holy crap mode. Okay, so that's importing from another catalog. Now, the other option we have when we're talking about this is I can export as a catalog. Where would I want to export as a catalog? Maybe I wanted to take something as an example. I wanted to take, say, a trip, and I was going to take it with me and do something else with it in a totally another computer. Maybe I wanted to travel with it. Maybe I wanted to do something different with it outside of my master catalog. So basically, I would select the images I want. Here I'll do Control A. And I'm going to come back up here to File, and it says Export as Catalog. It's going to ask me where do I want to put that catalog and what name do I want to give it. Down here, I can say include any available previews, build or include smart previews, which I'll tell you what those are here in a few minutes. And I'm saying export the negative files. Again, those are my original files that will go with it. I would then click Save, and it would then take those images and create a whole nother catalog that I could access separately. So these are the two methods if you have a bunch of catalogs you want to bring into one, or one catalog that you want to split. If I'm splitting my master catalog up into a bunch, in some ways it's almost easier to say, I'm going to split, say, all my travel off into its own catalog. What I would do is create that travel catalog with nothing in it, and then open up that new catalog, say import from another catalog, and then I could go in here and cherry pick what I want. You could also export into it once and then add to it. So that's importing and exporting your catalogs. Now, another thing with catalog maintenance or catalog efficiency that a lot of people don't necessarily have a good understanding of is the previews. If we look at an import screen, right up here under File Handling, it says Build Previews. Come on, computer, you can do it. Wow. Okay, so freeze. There we go. Good. Looks like I got to restart, so I'm going to turn your mics back on so if anybody has a question while this thing's coming up, I can try and answer them. One of the questions that came across was, what online backup service do I use? I use one called Backblaze, Backblaze. They're about $6 a month for as many computers or as many hard drives you attach to a single computer. Another good one that people have talked about in other sessions we have is Carbonite, being very similar to Backblaze. My big suggestion on any backup service that you look at, what you want to look at is, how do you get the images back if you have a failure? Because to build most backups can take quite a long time if you have a lot of them. How do you get them back? Backblaze and Carbonite both will ship you your images on some sort of a device if it's a large quantity, a hard drive, a flash drive, and such. So you definitely want to be looking at that. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go there again. We have three basic kinds of previews that can be accessed during the import. Two of them can only be accessed during the import. The first one is called minimal previews. This is a very small file. It's created very quickly, and it's a very low quality preview that's created by Lightroom. Now, the thing you need to understand is the previews are not used when you are editing in the develop module. The previews that we're creating are what you see in the library module. So if you have only minimal previews and you expand in the library module to a full-size single picture like a loop view, it's going to show a very low quality picture because it's a low resolution, low file size image. Embedded and sidecar previews are built in the camera if the camera does that and adds it to it. If your camera puts the preview in the embedded sidecar file, the XMP file. Somebody asked the question, why do I see a preview for some cameras and not the others? That's why. Some cameras do not. Older cameras do not. It also might be something in a camera that you're telling it, do not put the preview with the XMP file. The other question about previews that came across was, is there a reason to import a preview? Well, if you import the preview, you're importing the embedded or sidecar file, which is still a low quality file. Standard previews creates an image for viewing in the loop view, but not for zooming in. When you go past the fit, if you start going into the anywhere from the magnification 3:1, 2:1, 4:1, 1:1, those are then created something different. Now, standard previews will take longer to build when you do the import. But when you click on an image, you will see a better image in the library module. One of the options you have in the catalog settings under standard, that would be here, edit, catalog settings, file handling, under preview quality, under standard, it allows you to choose the size. And the size is based on the monitor that you're using, which is really why my recommendation is to choose auto, because it will then always go to the biggest and most appropriate size for your monitor. You wouldn't want to go for, see, it wouldn't do any good for me to go to the 2040 or the 2880 because my monitor doesn't support that. So that's why I let it go to the auto and let it tell. The preview quality, I can say low, medium, and high. I say medium because I'm just going to leave it in the middle of the road to not take up a lot of processing power, to give me a decent image. Because I know if I go to the develop module, Lightroom is going to create a high quality image. It is not the preview. It creates a high quality image that is then stored in the cache of the computer to be able to access it later on. Now the last option is 1:1. 1:1 gives you full size. It's 100%. If I zoom in, it's at 100%. Gives me the highest quality. There's no delay, because if I'm in a standard preview and I want to zoom way in on that, the software then creates the 1:1 for me, which is why if you've imported with standard previews and you click on an image the first time, it seems like there's a lag before it renders it zoomed in at, say, a 2:1, 3:1, 4:1 ratio, because it's creating that 1:1. If you don't want that lag when you zoom in, then you can choose 1:1 previews when you import. But it's going to take longer for the import to happen, and 1:1 previews are going to take up a lot of hard drive space because they're the exact same size file as your original image. Now, what Lightroom does is, if you're not creating 1:1 during import, and you only create 1:1 previews when you access it at a 3:1, 2:1, a zoomed in ratio, the default is it keeps them for 30 days and then gets rid of it. And again, up here under catalog settings, file handling, mine actually is never discarding them. Automatically discard, never. The default is 30 days. So after 30 days, that 1:1 will be thrown away. There is one advantage to keeping the previews and not letting them get thrown away if hard drive space is not an issue. If you ever lost your image files, but you had your catalog with those 1:1 previews, you could actually rebuild your images from those previews. Now, they would no longer be raw files, but you would still have the images. So, wow, why are these? So there we go. I can build standard one-to-one, and we'll talk about smart previews here next. Minimal, I can build those later by just saying here under library previews, and I want you to build a one-to-one preview of this one. So up here, it's building that preview. Because it already is added, it's up to date. It's not going to have to do it. If I say select all, because I know I don't have one-to-ones for everything, it is not going to create it. Minimal and embedded are only an option during import. As a rule, I bring everything in as standard and let it go like that. Now, during the import, try this one more time. Hopefully I don't crash again. I'm trying to get my Lightroom to unfreeze. Okay, we're not going to go there again because it doesn't like that screen. Okay. So on the import screen, it will allow you to choose which one of those four you want. The nice thing is once you choose one, it will stay there until you change it. Now, smart previews. Smart previews came in Lightroom 5. It's a high quality, highly compressed preview. Measures 2540 on the longest edge. Smart previews are used by Lightroom to synchronize with the mobile versions and such. We can create smart previews on import, or we can create them later. Now, the thing about it is you have to remember, if I create smart previews on import, it's creating another file that's going to take up space on your hard drive. So I don't know that you would necessarily want to create a smart preview on 1,000 pictures. Now, over here in the library module up on the histogram, you can see right here, It says original photo, and if I click that, I can tell it, I want you to build me a smart preview of that. Now it says original plus smart preview. Now I want to show you the benefit of having a smart preview. And the big thing it allows me to do is take my Lightroom catalog with me without having to take the hard drive storing all of the images. So I can leave my hard drive full of all my images at home. I can take my laptop with my catalog with the smart previews in it and travel with it. So here I'm going to show you a folder right here. I have this folder.
Hey Tim.
Yes.
We're not seeing your screens.
You're not.
It's still back on. Let's look at the difference between the previews. Okay. Nothing's changing.
All right, let me figure out why. Thank you. Let's see if we get it now. There we go. Okay. Does everybody see it says, let's look at the difference between previews with a histogram and a red circle?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So here I have a folder called 6.1, has 5 images in it, and you see the little question mark. The question marks is showing me that this folder cannot be found. Now, if I disconnected my hard drive, whereas like I was traveling without it, this little green symbol would be black. These little green lights, like this one right here on my W drive, which is not plugged in, is black. They actually have a couple of different colors here. Green means that drive is attached and ready to go, and I can access it. Black means that these images exist in the catalog, but the hard drive is not attached to it at this time. It's lost or unplugged. In this case, it's unplugged. The other colors it has is yellow and an orange and a reddish. They'll actually tell you when it gets the yellow that the hard drive is getting somewhere, I believe it's around 75% full. And you'll see the orange, which is in between. And then when it's getting up around 90 to 95% full, it'll turn to red. So it kind of gives you an idea, like it's time to go shopping for a hard drive with those little color symbols. But in this case, the fact that it's green would tell me that it's not attached. Now, for the case of this session, what I actually did here on this 6.1 is I changed the name. So it now thinks it's lost. And because it's lost, I got this little there we go. There we go. So I got a little exclamation point right up here at the top that says this could not be used because the original file could not be found. would you like to locate it? I'm going to show you here in a little bit how we find them. But in the case that if I wanted to and try and edit this and I took it to the develop module, you'll see that none of my editing tools are available to me, and it says the file could not be found because I cannot edit an image if it is not found. That image file has to be accessible. Now, I'm going to show you another group of images down here in a collection. From when I went to Mansfield Reformatory. Now, you'll see right up here, I got a little square. This is telling me that the images have a smart preview on them, and it's saying it right here. If you noticed, it does not say original file. Click on another one, it says original file. And I've now acquired, come on. Lightroom's going to give me an exclamation point here in a minute saying that these files are not found. But if I try to take this one into the develop module, because it has a smart preview, it will allow me to develop it. And if you notice, all my tools are available. So this is why you would create smart previews, is they would allow you to access the images. And what happens is, on a smart preview, if I am not connected, when I reconnect that file by connecting my catalog back to my external drives, it will then update the catalog with any changes I made to it. This is the advantage to smart previews, is they do allow you to take things with you. But I would also, as I said, you want to be careful. I don't want to create a smart preview on 78,000 images because I'm just going to fill up a hard drive. My catalog itself is going to become huge. But it does allow you to edit and manage and do things with your images without your catalog or your image files being actually attached. Now, one advantage to this might be if you worked off of a laptop regularly, you could have your catalog on your laptop. You could put your images on an external drive and disconnect the external drive. Maybe you want to go work in another room, or you want to take the laptop with you where you're going to go somewhere, and you have a job that you're editing. Well, it would allow me to edit those images without having to have that external drive attached and kind of hanging off my laptop with me. You like to sit on the couch and edit pictures or something, or go sit in the backyard or whatever. Now I don't have to drag my external drive with me. I could create smart previews for the ones that I'm editing, and then when I connect it back up, it would resync them. So the difference being, standard 1:1 are JPEGs. The smart previews are a low-res lossy DNG file, the digital negative. They allow them to have these smaller files, but give you a bit of a quality images where normal previews are too low in quality for editing in the develop module. When you're in the develop module, it actually creates a high resolution picture that's stored in your computer's cache. So they're designed to behave as much like an original as possible. They're applied, they go out of their way to make them look identical when they're applied to it. Noise reduction, sharpening, knows the size of the smart preview compared to the original, and so it applies the corrections scaled appropriately for it. Because file size and noise reduction and sharpening is very important. But I can still fine tune it if I don't like it. Generally, though, it does a pretty good job out of it. When do you see a difference? Extreme adjustments. It's possible that you'll see little artifacts in it that reconnect on the original file. That's because we're working on an 8-bit lossy compression in the smart preview. So you may see something in that. So if you're working on smart previews, you have to keep that in mind, and you necessarily don't want to go in there and start thinking that your quality is real low. You want to get an understanding when you're going to do this for how your images will look comparing between a smart preview and a regular preview. Okay. Any questions so far? I turned your mics back on. I've looked at the chats. I think I've answered most of your questions. Let's see. How is a developed smart preview updated? What happens is, soon as the catalog sees that there were smart previews and the original file is accessible, it then updates it in the catalog. The thing you have to understand is, in Lightroom, the corrections and any edits you do are not applied to the image. They are stored strictly within the Lightroom catalog until you export them. So based on that, it's applied as soon as you do it. What you'll see when you reconnect is you'll see those changes applied to the original full-size high-res image, especially in the develop module or with a one-to-one preview. And the other question was, can be applied on import? No, you can create a smart preview anytime on either a single image or a batch of images. There's a folder of 12, so I don't want to take too long. I can go Control A and then come up here to Library, Previews, Build Smart Previews. And so when I do that, it will go through and create smart previews for those images. Now, as I said, from a workflow point of view, you may want to then later on get rid of those smart previews to stop taking up the space. Well, you would do the same thing in the reverse of what I just let this finish. So I could then say these here that now all show that they will have a smart preview. And I can Control A them, go to Library, Previews, Discard. and I'll discard them, in which case now it will no longer take up that space in my catalog. Okay, backing up a little bit here, I was asked, when you import your travel catalog to your master catalog, is there still a catalog on your laptop? Or do you create a new one when you travel? The catalog is still there. I will create a new one for the next trip. I generally name it for the trip. I generally don't get rid of it until space becomes an issue. Now, what happens if you lose an image? If Lightroom says images are lost. As an example, for my folder here, my 6.1, how do images get lost? Generally speaking, most images get lost through some action of us. We cause it to happen. How do we cause it to happen? You move your images to a new location. You move your images to a new hard drive. You rename a folder or hard drive. It's kind of like moving and not telling the post office where you moved. Your mail is somewhere, you just don't know where it is. But if you make some changes, you make some adjustments, the mail will show up. So the big thing is, if you are going to get a new hard drive and move your images from where they are to the new hard drive, you want to be careful about the name you give the new hard drive, because they are in the catalog with that drive name. My suggestion generally is, say you have a catalog or you have a hard drive that's filling up. You have a 3 terabyte hard drive that's filling up. And it's like, okay, this is full. I've had people tell me, saying, well, I'm going to go buy a 5 terabyte hard drive and move everything to the 5 terabyte, and then I'll have 2 terabytes to go yet. Would not recommend that for a couple of reasons. One, just the operation of moving them can take time, and there's a chance of having file corruption and such. But the other reality is, you don't have a new 5 terabyte hard drive, you have a new 2 terabyte hard drive because you already filled 3 of it. So just give it a new name. 2020, 2021 hard drive, anything. And start using it for your new stuff. Leave the old stuff where it is. Now, if you are replacing a hard drive because you're concerned about it failing, you're concerned that it may have some problems, and so I'm going to move them to that new hard drive. My suggestion is, what you do is you name that new hard drive something very basic. Copy your images to it outside of Lightroom. When you're sure that everything is copied from the old hard drive to the new one, and they look alike, disconnect your old hard drive, then rename in your operating system the new hard drive to match exactly, case sensitive and everything, the name on the old hard drive. Then when you plug the new one in with that same name, Lightroom will see everything exactly like it was, and nothing would be lost. Now, if you have a folder or something, as an example, my 6.1 folder here, or a batch of folders. Look at my W drive. I can look at this because this is black. I know the entire drive is offline. Now, part of it is because I've actually, rather slowly, I've been moving most everything off the W drive onto this drive here, my Seagate 3TB or S. But in this case, I have my 6.1 here. You have this missing one. One of the easiest ways to find that and reconnect it is I'm going to put my mouse on it, and I'm going to right-click, and it's going to say Find Missing Folder. Now, you have to know where to look for it. It does not have any sort of artificial intelligence that's going to compare pixels. It doesn't have any sort of method to say, I think this is what you did with it. But if I moved a folder to another place, even if I moved it into another folder as a subfolder, I have to know where it is. So here I know it's on my miscellaneous photos folder on my 3TB Seagate. And I know it's under the 2019 folder. So I'm going to go look for it. And here, for the point of this, I renamed it to 06-01-TRG. So I can then, when I click on that, and I say select that folder, Lightroom then says, oh, okay, you gave it a new name, and now those images are no longer lost. So if you happen to rename a folder, maybe it's like, no, I'm not going to give that the 6.1 dash. I want to call that Detroit from the Z deck. A lot of people will have a tendency to rename it outside of Lightroom. And by doing that, Lightroom is going to be lost. If I want to rename it in Lightroom, I would choose it. I right-click, and I can say rename. And in this case, what I'm going to do is just take off the TRG that I added for this course. When I click Save, I've renamed it, and it's no longer lost. These are the big things that cause people to lose their folders, is they rename them. They're looking at it and they're saying, well, these dates mean nothing to me. I'm going to rename this to something that is more appropriate. I'm going to rename this to the Milan Dragway. If you do it outside of Lightroom, Lightroom is going to be lost because you've changed the address, but Lightroom has not updated its database. You got to remember, Lightroom is a database. So those are the big things that happen when you lose your folder or lose your image. Now, if you happen to lose images in a folder, now here I'm just going to take off the Smart Preview on this one. So now that it's lost, I can't edit it. It's going to say here into the development, it won't allow me to edit it because it's saying the image is lost. So I can right-click on this. This file cannot be used because the original, would you like to locate it? Yes, I would. So again, I have to know where I'm going to look. So here I would navigate to the folder that I think it's in. And here it is, the 007. And because other ones are also missing nearby, if I find one, it's going to say, hey, wait a minute, there's a whole bunch of these missing. I think I can fix them all. So now it's gone, and none of them will be missing. So now I can take this into the develop module, and I have access to all of my developing tools. Really? I just didn't give it time. There we go. Oh, it's faster than it. So those are the ways, if you happen to have, like I said, most times images are lost because of something you did. I've had emails and phone calls from people who have contacted me who are using Lightroom and have literally said, Lightroom lost my 30,000 pictures. Yeah, no, it didn't. You just misplaced them. We'll have to go find them. But it's relatively easy to go find them, knowing how Lightroom tracks them and the tools that are at my disposal to do that. Okay. Now, when we leave Lightroom, Lightroom will ask us, do I want to back up my catalog? We are not talking about the image files. We are talking about the catalog file, the database. The database holds all of our work. The database holds everything that we've done to those images, everything that we've added, accessed, developed, rated, color labeled. All of that is all stored in that database. So losing that is a tremendous amount of work to recreate. So we want to back that up. I've always told people you never want to have your catalog and your database, or your catalog and database and your image files in the same place, on the same hard drive. Because hard drives fail. I've had them fail on me. It's painful. You can get them recovered. It's extremely expensive. Unbelievably expensive to have a hard drive professionally recovered. So we want to back up this catalog when we are ready to do this. Now, this happens when we leave Lightroom. And here under the catalog settings, which I access through Edit Catalog Settings, right here, back up the catalog. Never once a month, once a week, once a day, every time, or just the next time. I cannot imagine any situation where I would not say every time. I can't imagine why you would only want to back it up once a day, once a week, once a month, or never. Now, maybe you are running a computer system that is using mirrored drives with a very extensive off-site backup. So your catalog is backed up extensively outside of the program. Okay, now there's a reason maybe not to do it. For the average photographer, for myself, I've got to back it up. And I want to back it up every time it exits. The big thing is I actually have the choice to back it up or not. When it exits, when I click exit, and I'm going to do this here in a minute, but I'll have to restart Lightroom to get back in. Because once I select this, even if I click the X, Lightroom still exits, but it doesn't back up. So I can say back up or I can say skip. If I went into Lightroom and did not do anything, all I did was go in and look around. I didn't import any pictures. I didn't edit any pictures. I didn't do any work in the library module on images with colors and labels and sorting. Then I'm going to say skip, because there's no reason to back it up. And it's just faster. So what will happen is when I say exit, I may get this, and this has to do with metadata. I'm going to tell Lightroom, finish the metadata changes next time. So here I have this. So I'm saying every time Lightroom, and then I'm telling it where do I want to store it. So this is where I have them stored. They're in a folder on my C drive called Documents, Lightroom Catalogs, under that, Backups. And you'll see the various dates in there that I've backed up this catalog. Now, here's the thing that happens. Every time you do a backup, it is a fully functional, usable catalog. The nice thing about this, let me click on this one. Oh, it's not going to let me look at it. Let me bring up a file browser. So here I have a zip file of my Lightroom catalog. All I need to do is unzip this, put this catalog back where I need to access it, and I am back in business. The thing that's nice about this is not a restore function. I've had other backups where they say, okay, we're now going to restore from your backup, and 12, 14, 15 hours later, it is still restoring my backup. It's rebuilding it. Now, we lose our previews. We don't have our image files with it, which is fine. I lost my catalog, but not the images. Now here I can tell it to test the integrity of the backup. What that kind of does is it looks at the database and says, this thing looks okay. I don't see any anomalies or anything. Optimization just kind of goes through and it cleans up stuff. You don't really need to optimize a lot unless you're getting into very, very large catalogs. So then once I say backup, it's going to perform the backup. And we'll see it's checking the integrity and such. I'm going to cancel that now because that's going to take a little bit. So let me exit out of here. It's going to let me. Question came across, can I delete last year's backups? Absolutely. You only need to keep as many as you feel comfortable with. I periodically go in and say, oh, I got a lot of them now. I'm going to get rid of them. So there, I aborted it and my Lightroom closed. Now, the next thing I want to show you and have you kind of look at, and I'm going to show you how you do this. when my Lightroom comes up, come on, it's tired today. There we go. Grab my catalog. You see this picture right here. It says the photography of Timothy Griffin and creative vision. That is known as the splash screen. And one of the things you can do, you can actually do this for Photoshop also. And you can actually set that splash screen to any picture you want, like I've done. Before I show you that, I want to talk a little bit about Machine and Mac users. I don't know how many Mac people I have out there who use Time Machine. One of the things I want you to be sure that you understand, and the way I understand, because I am not a Mac user, but Time Machine has a tendency to kind of say, hey, I need to back that up, and it's going to grab the file. What I would recommend you do is tell Time Machine to exclude your active Lightroom catalog or catalogs, the ones you work on, and only back up the backups. Because what can happen is if you're working in Lightroom and Time Machine says, hey, it's time to back that up. Hey, I got to back that catalog up. And it starts backing up your database, that's your catalog, you can have corruption in your catalog. Whereas if it backs up your backups only, it will never be accessing them, but will have your last backup. The other thing you might want to do just to keep things small is to exclude the previews file. And if you were to look at your Lightroom catalog, right here on mine, I have my Lightroom Previews LR data. This holds all my previews in it. So by excluding that, I'm not going to back those up. I would have to recreate them if I had to restore, but it will make my backups through Time Machine especially smaller. Unfortunately, I can't tell you how you exclude it because I am not a Mac user. It's my understanding that it's pretty easy to do in Time Machine. Now, here you can see I changed my splash screen. So I took a picture I wanted, I added my text in Photoshop, and I saved it as a JPEG. It's actually really easy to put your own picture. And normally what you would see is a little screen that would list all the people at Adobe who worked on the software. The cool thing about this is if you use your Lightroom catalog and sit with clients, so maybe you get together with a client and you're going to meet somewhere to talk about their images or to talk about a prospective job, and you start Lightroom to show them your work. During the boot up process, you can show them one of your pictures. So once you save it as a JPEG, all you have to do is save it in a folder here for like Mac users, library, application, import, Adobe, Lightroom, in a folder called Splash Screen. If Splash Screen doesn't exist, just create it, and whatever you put in there, whichever image is in there as a JPEG, will show up. So if I wanted to change that, I take that one out and put a new one in. On the Windows, it's users, your username. So mine would be users, Timothy Griffin, app data, roaming, Adobe, Lightroom, splash screen. Again, if you just do this for the first time, the folder splash screen does not exist. You may have to create it, but you just create a folder and put your image file in it. And every time you open up Lightroom, or if you go Adobe Photoshop splash screen, the same thing would happen in Photoshop. It's just kind of a nifty way, kind of a cool way that you can customize your Lightroom, your Photoshop to you as it starts up, instead of looking at a whole bunch of names of people from Adobe. Okay, so that is the basics of catalog maintenance, on managing your images with managing your catalog. Different things you can do with it, from the splitting and the merging in. Like I said, I really like working with the extra hard drive while I'm traveling, and then bringing it into my master catalog when I get home. Gives me all the functions of Lightroom without having to drag my whole catalog with me, or smart previews. Okay. I think I've got the questions. Did I miss anything? Is there any other questions out there? I turned your microphones back on if they were muted. Nobody?
Very helpful. There? Thank you, Tim.
Okay. I didn't even think I lost everybody.
No, it was awesome. Thank you.
Anybody?
This was very helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This worked well.
Good. Yeah. This is about my fourth one of these. I'm getting better and better at it. In case you didn't see it, my next one is first week of May on keywording. And probably the
Would you send out an email?
I did. But it's right there on the website. You can go to the website and join in.
Great, thank
Will
you.
you send out an email with the recording, the video of this session?
Yeah, I got to figure out where I can put it for you to get it. This is the first one that I've actually remembered to record. The last couple I've done, it's like I get all finished and it's like, oh crap, I didn't hit the record button. So, like I said, I'm getting better at these. So as soon as I have to wait, I have to process it, but I will send out an email to everybody on where you can download it as an MP4 or view
Perfect.
it.
Thank you.
We may end up just putting it on our.
Thank you so much.
We have a YouTube channel, so we may end up just putting it on the YouTube channel, and then I'll send a link to it.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome. Anybody else got any questions?
Nope, thanks.
Have a great rest of the weekend.
Any other questions about Lightroom? Quick questions I could answer. All right. Well,
I have a quick one for you, Tim.
Sure.
Okay, so you know when you import your images and then you go over to the back and you tell them where to save it before you start the import.
Right.
I have, on occasion, clicked the wrong folder. So I've taken them from, the folder apples, but I've saved them into a folder oranges. So then I've got all of my oranges and apples in the same folder. I'm afraid to ever try to split those up because I'm afraid of losing them. How would you do that without losing them?
A little bit is dependent